Hi everyone, my name is Pamela Griffin and I will be presenting on special education student transitions into preschool program. So part of the problem and why I came up with this proposal was there was a lack of information that we would gather about our incoming students from our sending districts. Students weren't always present at intake meetings that were held, so it was hard to get a good picture of what the student was going to be like. And as a result of that, most oftentimes we didn't have the appropriate equipment, including seating and positioning devices. And families weren't prepared for the transition when they went from a family-centered approach, such as early intervention, into a school setting. So one of the research questions, or two of them, that I was proposing was how can our special services district best improve early childhood special education students to transition successfully to our preschool program? And what supports can we put into place to ensure a smooth transition? So the definition of transition, as part of my literature review, is at the heart of inclusive early childhood programs are the experiences of individual families. This process, transition, is critical to children with a disability and their parents, especially as this is the first of many experiences that they will have during their school years. That's from one of the articles that I had researched. Another quote that I thought defined transition well was the process or period of changing from one state or condition to another. Transition services can be further defined as a carefully planned, outcome-oriented process initiated by the primary service provider who establishes and implements a written multi-agency service plan for each child moving into a new program. So different transition ages within the literature review were for ages 3 to 5 transitioning into preschool disabled programs and kids at 5 transitioning into kindergarten. I found that there were changes to the environment in which learning occurs, such as the move from the family-centered approach into being a student-centered. Effective communication seemed to be key amongst all the literature that was looked at. And other age groups mentioned were elementary to middle school to high school, and then finally high school to college and career. So, as all of you know, part of the law is the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, that governs the provision of education and related services to children with disabilities. Part B of IDEA is for ages 3 to 21 or children experiencing developmental delay. And then Part B is a preschool component that addresses services for children with disabilities ages 3 to 5. So some of the guidelines for transitioning that I found: the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction and the Department of Special Education. They outline plans to include time frames, the roles and responsibilities assigned to each staff person and what that might look like. Transition activities were identified as well as available resources. There were also transition agreements created. And one of the literatures looked at said that communication among educators and other service providers and parents will assure that specific child needs and expectations are identified and addressed, potential problems avoided, and trust is developed between all involved, which is a huge component when you're dealing with a 3-year-old that is going from the home into a school setting, has never been away from the parents, and most of our students are either physically and communication impaired. They can't report back to their parents if something occurred at school. So establishing that trust early on is a huge component to ensuring successful transitions. So what does it all mean? So some key components taken from the literature review were communication is a huge factor. The guidelines, the laws, policies, and procedures, planning for transition, activities involving a smooth transition, and then assigning designated duties for personnel roles. So data originally was collected last semester qualitatively, as it was the best means for my research question, which seeks to understand the real life experiences of transitions for 3-year-olds, their families, and the staff involved, to remedy inconsistency among the transitions, resulting in inadequate preparation for those transitions. Qualitative research was conducted through various interviews. 3 staff originally were asked 4 different questions pertaining to transitions to preschool in our school community. I individually interviewed another special education preschool teacher at our school, a speech therapist, and a physical therapist, all of whom are involved in our preschool intakes. So the data looked at that was collected from those interviews found commonalities with the literature and trends, and flat out just what worked. So those interviewed revealed the following, which was continuation of intake meetings, like making them a requirement for families to bring their kids to the meetings so that we can get a true picture of what that child looks like and the needs that they do have. Make all reports and testing available from the sending districts prior to the meeting for our support staff to look at. Providing tours and intakes should not be rushed was another suggestion from one of our staff members, and explaining preschooler expectations at our district, as well as a possible day for orientation for our families. So 3 objectives are going to be looked at for this proposal. So the first one is that I'm proposing to interview families and staff members with questionnaires. So I'm asking them to complete those questionnaires within 10 days to get them back, to get things started. Those questionnaires will have a 10-point rating scale, and they will be given and completed hopefully by June of this year to add more baseline information. And the same questionnaire I plan on giving after our policies and procedures are implemented to rate satisfaction. The second objective is to establish a professional learning community, or PLC, prior to the end of this school year, to include a professional from each discipline: OT, PT, speech, case management, a preschool teacher, and an administrator. Time frame given is due to our 10-month contracts. Not all of our staff work the extended school year, so I'd like to establish this prior to the school year ending. And then the third objective is to create and implement a policy and or procedures to ensure successful transitions of special education students into our preschool program by December. So the way in which those 3 objectives are linked to the NELP standards are: objective 1 for the parent and staff surveys is linked to standard 1, the mission, vision, and core values of our staff, just giving them a chance to give some input into what should be done and looked at during intakes and transitions. And standard 8, giving families in our community meaningful engagements, which is very much what this study is all about. And then for objective 2, forming a PLC, again, standard 1, mission, vision, and core values of our district. And then standard 6, the professional capacity of our school personnel and just using all the talents that we have amongst our child study team, and their professional judgment on the best way to transition our students. And then objective 3 is to create new policy and or procedures, which all link to standards 8, 9, and 10. Again, meaningful engagement of our families and community. Standard 9, operations and management. And then standard 10, school improvement. So a little bit about our district. Because we are a special services school district, we have a lot more variables involved for transitions for students than a typical district might have. We collaborate with early intervention providers as well as our students' home or sending districts. Some of the demographics of our school is we're split up into 2 schools. The first is for grades pre-K through 8th, which is called Ocean Academy. And the second is, as you know, Cape May County High School, grades 9 through 12. And then those are some of the demographics and the breakdowns of the students that we serve. So the scope of the effort for activities, parents and staff surveys, the formation and implementation of the PLC, and development and implementation of new policies and or procedures to implement the change. The surveys will be due by June 1st, and then again they will be due prior to the end of the end of the year, the fiscal year of 2025, so that we can rate performance. And then for the PLC, it'll be formed prior to the school year ending, as I had said before, because not all of our staff work the extended school year. And then the new policies and procedures will be implemented hopefully by November 1st so that we can see a change. So my leadership role in all of it is that I plan on providing for these activities to gain the input of my staff and families that we serve by continuing to build the climate and culture of my school. I'm going to reach out and ask if any of them have questions or concerns with the surveys and provide whatever supports are needed for them to complete. During PLC meetings, I will bring current literature on preschool transitions and share what other school districts might be doing to alleviate the stress that could be included and provide solutions for all involved. My field mentor involvement, she'll be receiving all the agendas for the PLC meetings, hopefully attend meetings whenever available, and provide suggestions and feedback when possible. And the resources that are expected to be required to implement the proposed plan are a computer, Google Drive applications, staff and families willing to be participants, and staff willing to implement the new policies or procedures for ensuring smooth transitions to our preschool program. My hope is that our preschool PLC will create a policy or procedure to ensure consistency in communication for transitioning new students and families to our district. I see all stakeholders valuing our new PLC and what our ideas have to offer the district overall. I'm predicting that they will all see how effective we can be to ease the transitions to our district and how we can reduce family and student anxiety and stress to make sure that the student is successful in their new school environment. And then here are some of my references and a second page and a third. So thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.